There are increasing calls for the scrapping of e-tolls and VAT increases. ANC members marched to the union buildings in protest, saying the poor bear the brunt.
Thousands of ANC members, the Tripartite Alliance and civic organizations brought the Pretoria CBD to a standstill. They demand that high data costs and e-tolls must fall. The party believes the technology in the gantries should be put to better use and bemoans the effect they have on the poor.
By e-tolls, we are not referring to that technology. We want that technology to chase criminals. We want that technology to make sure our roads are safe in Gauteng. Government should resist the temptation to look at VAT increase as an easy target for dealing with fiscal pressures, because this will hit the poor. The poor will be hit the hardest. In this regard, we call on the HN review the decision to increase VAT by 1% point.
Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Radebe, received the memorandum on behalf of President Cyril Ramaphosa.
That some of the demands that we have put here, some steps have already been taken to address them, including the issue of data and the allocation of spectrum, because the Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Dr. Kwele, has already done so, but we need to do more in order to ensure that your demands are met.
The Transport Minister also shed light on the e-toll saga.
We're discussing with Sandra, we are discussing with the President, and we're going to be engaging all other stakeholders to try and find a lasting solution to the issue of e-tolls.
The ANC in Gauteng says e-tolls should go before next year's elections.
Well, joining us now in studio is Dumisani Dakile, who is Cosatu's provincial secretary. Very good evening to you, Dumisani. Thank you so much for joining us. Are you at all pleased with the outcome of today's march?
We are quite pleased with the response that we have received. This is just a beginning of a mass voting action. We think much more actions are still coming. With the response that we have received today, I think we are quite satisfied.
Okay. Take us back on what the march was all about. What is it that you're seeking from the government?
Well, basically what we're seeking to government is that it must be able to understand the hardship that in some of its policies that it is adopting and implementing is having to the poor and the working class. The increase of VAT itself, it has affected the working class more than any other people. It has affected the poor more than any other people. And there's no any cautioning that is taking place in that regard. Over and above that, there are many other taxes that the working class is expected and required to pay. And we believe that this is not sustainable.
I mean, there's a cloud of confusion with regards to the e-tolls, particularly within the ruling party, the ANC. I mean, one faction of the ANC says that they should be done away with, particularly the ANC in Gauteng, and then the other party, that's Transport Minister Blade Nzimande, the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, I mean, slamming his stance on the e-tolls. I mean, isn't this perhaps an electioneering tool for the African National Congress?
We don't think so at all, because if you look in terms of the history of this particular matter, it started immediately after the 2010. We thought that the roads were being repaired, the roads were extended as part of the 2010 project, and these are going to be some of the benefits post the World Cup in 2010. And little did we knew that there were a lot of secret, what they call agreements that have been signed with number of companies, among them being this Australian company, that they're going to be able therefore now to charge people for using the roads. These roads have not been built by the new democratic government. These are the roads that have been built by the apartheid government through the blood and sweat of the working class, through the blood and sweat of the African people. More over and above that, we're paying exorbitant amount of money on taxes in relation to the petrol levy, which it is meant to maintain the road, which is meant to build more roads. So we don't see any reason and need why people must then continue to pay for something that doesn't help them.
And particularly the concern is that, I mean, why they're paying for roads that they were using for free previously, and what kind of impact does this have on people around Gauteng?
It has a severe impact. If we have to move from Soweto to bury your relative in Tembisa, it means you must pay for this road. If you want to go and bury your relatives in Pretoria, it means you must pay. Over and above that, the petrol that you are paying, as you pour the petrol, you pay a tax And a part of that particular tax is for maintenance and the building of the roads. As you use that particular road, again, you're expected to pay is exorbitant, is unreasonable. And I think the issue that people who are in government, they seem to forget where they get their mandate. People who in government, we so believe now, they begin to think through their stomach, not through their head. While the outside government, they're able to apply their mind, they're able to think logical. But once they've been given packages in government, the bureaucracy absorb them, the bureaucracy convince them, and they're able then now to take a stand that is anti-people. The ANC has said in its national conference at Nasrec that the people must be listened to. That the ANC, as it continues to move forward, it must govern, it must be conscious of the will of the people. And therefore, we think that the standard has been taken by Tito Mboweni, by the way, it is nowhere.
And perhaps one of the mandates, as was just said, for the government is providing an enabling environment for the government to collect revenue, which will in turn help the people.
Well, we're saying that the revenue is there in terms of the petrol levy. And therefore, there's no reason for you to add any other, what you call, additional levy. Because people are getting suffocated. You know, this is the same thing. The ANC said in Nasrec, for example, we must nationalize the Reserve Bank. Tito Mboweni from nowhere is in New York, is getting excited. It tells us that the people who took these decisions were not what you call clever enough. The ANC said, for example, as it has agreed in Nasrec, we must make sure that we create jobs. What is it that we see here in SABC? People were told that more than 2,000 people are going to lose jobs. So what's it? Those who are in government are being mandated by the ANC, and they must be able to implement the policies of the ANC. And what we are seeing so far with the people that are there, it is contrary to what we expect and require out of them.
What's Cosatu's suggestion then? What should be done as an alternative measure to counter the effects of the e-tolls?
Well, definitely the first part is that we must continue to urge people to make sure that this system is not workable as it is. We are quite confident as we speak now that when this campaign started, many people didn't understand what the issues were. We have built the consciousness of the populace in Gauteng. They understand this particular concept, and the need for them to boycott what you call the e-tolls. And we are succeeding in that front. Secondly, we are saying to people, just to boycott is not only enough, but we must engage into mass action. We must mobilize each and every sector of the society. Because if you look in terms of the people of Gauteng, across political affiliation, across ideological affiliation, they've been able to hit the color of Cosatu. Cosatu has been able to educate people. Cosatu has been able to teach people what this thing is all about. And from where we are quite satisfied. We have thought that at least we have made
Mr. Dakile, perhaps the gist of my question is, in as much as you are critical of this system, you should be able to be offering solutions. What are your solutions then to this?
The solutions are quite very clear. For each and every litre of petrol that we pay a levy. The levy that we pay for is, among others, in terms of road maintenance, is around a question of building the roads. We're saying to government, because we've got this burden of paying off this thing, just take 10 cents out of it. There's no need for them to even increase any levy now. They just take 10 cents out of that particular levy. That will be able to pay off this monster.
And what should happen to the countries then?
The countries will remain as they are. There are quite many other what you call functions that the countries will be able to do. They will be able to enforce law. They will be able to what you call to apply the intelligence system in terms of maintaining the roads. Because it is a white monster that we have inherited. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can be able to do about it.
I mean, billions have been spent already on the gantries and on the entire e-tolling system. And the fact that motorists are now refusing to pay e-tolls will further push, or rather balloon the debt of SANRAL to a point where it is unmanageable. I mean, the fact that some of the people at the grassroots will end up paying for the tolls, even not just for those motorists who don't have cars.
Well, the fact of the matter is, see, these roads are not just Gauteng roads. These are national roads. These are critical roads in terms of the socio-economic development of our country. These roads play a very important role in terms of the economic activities of this particular country. So they're not just mere Gauteng roads. But the fact of the matter we're saying, people already are paying for these particular roads. We're paying each and every time you fill up your petrol. we are paying for these particular roads. And what is it that exactly are we paying for? Are we paying for this technology, or are we paying for the roads that in any event they were there even before? But that's one part. Another part that what we're calling for a proper and intense investigation in relation to SANRAL, because the Competition Commission, for example, it has concluded, and there's evidence to that effect, that people who built this road collided, fixed price. In terms of our calculation, these roads were not even supposed to even move beyond 10 billion. We need to go in there and say what happened. Because in our view, when white people, in particular when a business get involved into corruption, it is just looked aside as if nothing has happened. There should be a thorough investigation in relation to why have these roads ballooned to such extent.
Okay. Mr. Dakile, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. That is Cosatu Provincial Secretary General Dumisani Dakile.